A sudden TV alert reveals the emergence of a mysterious new pathogen detected at an airport. Those infected become dangerously aggressive, and chaos quickly escalates as flames engulf the terminal. Within 2 months, the contagion spreads globally, evolving into a catastrophic pandemic. The virus mutates individuals into savage, zombie-like entities referred to as ferals, who are perceived as wild, uncontrollable predators. Authorities attempt to enforce quarantine zones, but public outrage erupts as many citizens oppose the measures, advocating for the rights of the infected, whom they insist are still human. Military forces intervene, clashing with civilians in an effort to restore order, only worsening the crisis. One day, all television broadcasts abruptly go offline. Abigail and her brother receive a call from their father, an airline pilot, who reassures them he's aiding others during the crisis and insists they'll be secure with their mother. Suddenly, a loud noise from upstairs prompts the family to flee the house. As they prepare to enter their vehicle, a feral leaps out and fatally assaults their mother. Abigail dives beneath the car, forced to watch in horror as the creature turns its attention to her brother. The sound of a distant police siren sends the feral fleeing. Abigail hears her brother weakly calling her name, but before she can reach him, her mother transforms into a feral and ends his life. Overcome with grief, Abigail sobs, drawing the attention of her now feral mother, who lunges toward her, only to be shot by Cassius. He saves Abigail, who embraces him in gratitude. As her brother begins transforming, Cassius instructs Abigail to close her eyes before mercifully ending his suffering. A decade later, the world lies in ruins, ravaged by the aftermath of the outbreak. Few humans remain, and nature has reclaimed urban landscapes. In the wilderness, teenage Abigail and Cassius hunt for survival. It's evident that Cassius has honed Abigail's skills. She skillfully downs a deer with a precise shot, though he scolds her for acting impulsively instead of waiting patiently. At nightfall, the pair sets up camp, ensuring all perimeter alarms are activated. Hours later, a tripwire triggers, jolting Cassius awake. He exits the tent to investigate, discovering debris caught in the wire. Nearby sounds prompt him to calm the horses and draw his weapon, narrowly dispatching an approaching feral. Recognizing this as likely a scout sent by a larger pack, Cassius wakes Abigail, urging her to move on. For several days, the duo continues their journey, stopping occasionally to rest the horses while Cassius trains Abigail further. One afternoon, they spot a vehicle nearby and instinctively grab their weapons. They witness a man fending off a feral, unaware of another creeping up behind him. Abigail attempts to intervene but fires too hastily, striking both the man and the attacking feral. Another feral emerges from the car, intent on feeding, but Cassius swiftly eliminates it. While searching the vehicle for supplies, Abigail watches as Cassius euthanizes the injured man with a machete and takes his shoes. The car's radio crackles, attempting to reach the driver. Abigail considers warning whoever is on the other end about the approaching horde, but Cassius advises her against responding. Moments later, multiple vehicles arrive, and a group of survivors surrounds them, weapons drawn. Upon inspecting the deceased man, they note that a human caused his death, leading them to accuse Abigail and Cassius of murder for theft. When the group's leader threatens to execute them, Cassius and Abigail quickly disarm and incapacitate the two closest individuals, seizing their weapons. Tensions run high as both factions face off, prompting Megan, a pregnant woman, to step out of a vehicle in an attempt to defuse the situation. At that moment, the horses grow agitated, and a swarm of ferals emerges, surrounding them. Both groups immediately open fire, desperately trying to thin the horde's numbers. Despite their efforts, the sheer number of ferals overwhelms them, forcing Cassius and Abigail to resort to melee combat with their blades. The other survivors, however, lack close-quarter skills, and one by one, they fall victim to the relentless onslaught. A woman prepares a Molotov cocktail but is attacked before she can use it, causing the explosive to ignite on a nearby car. The resulting blast sends Cassius flying backward. One survivor is bitten and attempts to end his life, only to find his weapon empty. He succumbs to the infection moments later. The leader is dragged away by a massive feral and brutally beaten to death, while Megan's husband, David, narrowly escapes a similar fate by kicking off his attacker. Abigail helps the couple into a vehicle, and Cassius eliminates several more ferals before joining them inside. As they speed off, a feral clings to the roof, prompting Cassius to slam on the brakes, dislodging it. Abigail seizes the opportunity to retrieve their belongings before they make their escape. Enraged, the colossal feral roars upon realizing they've killed its mate. Back on the road, Abigail inspects their supplies and realizes they're critically low on ammunition. Megan explains they were en route to a riverside settlement and mentions she's 35 weeks pregnant, with the baby due soon. However, Abigail and Cassius express skepticism about seeking refuge in colonies, having encountered numerous failed ones in the past. Suddenly, the vehicle sputters to a halt, the engine dead. With no other option, the group continues on foot. They eventually reach an abandoned town and decide to spend the night there. After clearing a building of any threats, they set up camp. Megan offers to share her food, but Cassius and Abigail decline, preferring to rely solely on hunted game to avoid contamination. The couple reveals they had contacted the settlement via radio and learned it has ample resources and medical personnel. Reaching it will take a week, making the journey perilous. In turn, Abigail shares that she and Cassius are headed to the west coast to flee by boat. After setting up perimeter traps outside, Cassius consults a map and advises the couple on the safest route to the colony. However, he refuses to accompany them, fearing the horde will seek vengeance. Abigail pulls him aside for a private conversation, urging him to reconsider and help the couple, suggesting this colony might be different. Their disagreement escalates, but Cassius remains adamant. In the dead of night, the horde discovers the abandoned car and follows its trail to the town. Meanwhile, unable to sleep, Cassius and David strike up a conversation. Cassius reveals he always keeps a bullet in his pocket as a contingency plan if bitten, while David laments his limited possessions, a cigarette and a sprained ankle. Bonding over their shared struggles, Cassius reluctantly agrees to assist the couple in reaching the colony. The next morning, Abigail hears a noise and descends to investigate. A feral ambushes her, causing her to drop her firearm, but she swiftly dispatches it with her machete. Another feral chases her upstairs, where Abigail uses a shattered window to hurl the creature out of the building. She nearly loses her balance, but is caught just in time by Cassius. By the time the horde reaches the structure, the group has already fled. A feral stumbles into one of the tripwires, triggering a minor explosion that takes it out. Later, Abigail recognizes their surroundings and recalls a nearby civilian airport where her father kept a small aircraft. Cassius argues against heading there, reasoning that an airport would be an easy spot for the horde to trap them, not to mention most planes are likely long gone. However, Abigail and the couple decide to go anyway, leaving Cassius with no choice but to tag along. After some time, they stumble upon an old building and a vehicle containing a man who was recently shot. Cassius instructs Abigail to scavenge the building for supplies but insists they keep moving, as he senses they're not alone. Abigail finds only some coffee and misses the family hiding in one of the rooms. Cassius inspects the car's trunk and discovers a wheelchair, which they repurpose to carry Megan. Once the group departs, the horde arrives at the building, swiftly slaughtering the hidden family. When they finally reach the airport, they find no planes in sight. David and Cassius begin debating their next move, but Abigail interrupts when she locates her father's hangar. Inside, they discover a plane, and fortunately, David possesses the technical expertise needed to repair it. While he works, Cassius and Abigail explore the hangar. Abigail finds a photograph of herself with her father on the floor and places it back on the wall. Suddenly, the horde arrives, prompting the group to rush onto the plane despite it not being fully operational. Cassius fires at the approaching mob to buy them time, while David manually spins the propeller to get the engine running. Abigail struggles to pilot the aircraft, her limited flying knowledge causing the plane to move sluggishly as the horde closes in. Thankfully, she figures out the controls, and the plane begins to pick up speed. A feral clings to the door, but Cassius shoots it off before it can cause trouble. The plane lifts off, allowing the group to escape, though only briefly. Moments later, the aircraft starts failing, forcing Abigail to attempt a crash landing. The plane smashes through a cluster of trees before hitting the ground. Fortunately, it lands upright, and everyone survives with only minor injuries. Spotting a deserted train station nearby, they check it for threats and decide to rest there. Cassius consults the map and calculates it will take 2 days to reach the colony, so they plan to set out early the next morning. Abigail tallies their remaining ammunition and realizes they're running dangerously low. Megan and Cassius share a meal, during which Cassius admits Megan reminds him of his late wife. He opens up about having to euthanize her infected relatives and how she eventually took her own life after being unable to cope with the trauma. He also recounts the story of a boy in his hometown who was bitten. Because the bite missed an artery, It took several days for the infection to fully take hold. Meanwhile, David finds a secluded spot to examine his ankle, revealing it's not sprained, it's bitten. Knowing what needs to be done, he raises his gun but hesitates, unable to pull the trigger. The next day, the group resumes their journey. Under the scorching sun, David begins feeling unwell, and Cassius notices blood seeping from his leg. Waiting until Megan and Abigail are ahead, Cassius pushes David against a tree and inspects his ankle, confirming his worst fear. Cassius gives David the chance to break the news to the group in his own way, but warns him that if he delays too long, he'll have no choice but to take action himself. As evening falls, the group spots a house with lights on. Approaching cautiously, they're greeted by a voice demanding their intentions. Cassius senses danger, but Abigail steps forward, explaining their plight and pleading for help. She assures the voice they come in peace, mentioning Megan's pregnancy. The door opens to reveal Norton, who greets them with a gun pointed at them. He orders them to deposit all their weapons in a chest outside before inviting them in with an unsettlingly warm demeanor. Cassius notes the house has electricity, and Norton explains that as an engineer, he's rigged up devices to generate power and hot water. He briefly mentions having a wife but brushes off Megan's question about her whereabouts. Norton shares bread and vegetables with the group, and Abigail is relieved to finally take a shower. Cassius uses the opportunity to power up his laptop, browsing old photos that reveal his wife was pregnant before the outbreak. Later, when he checks on Megan, she confesses her fear. She hasn't felt the baby move since arriving at the house. She makes Cassius promise to protect her child if something happens to her. Afterward, Norton offers everyone a drink and shares that he's lived there for 2 decades, though his wife is no longer around. He claims to have heard about the colony on the radio but shows no interest in joining, preferring solitude. Norton begins ranting about humanity's obsession with restoring the past, blaming the pandemic on people's destruction of the planet and moral decay. He even likens the virus to a form of evolution, claiming only the strong have survived. Cassius notices a peculiar knife on the table, but Norton quickly removes it. Meanwhile, David, feeling increasingly ill, rushes to the bathroom and realizes the infection is spreading. When he emerges, he discovers his friends unconscious. The drinks had been drugged by Norton, who now dons a lab coat and wields a strange device. Spotting David's condition, Norton activates the machine, emitting a sound that sends David writhing in agony. Norton explains the device acts like a dog whistle, targeting only the infected before David collapses. In the meantime, the horde reaches the train station and continues its relentless search. David regains consciousness to find the entire group bound in a basement. Norton is there, taking notes for his experiment, and reveals he keeps his infected wife locked in a cage. He releases her, using the device to control her as he commands her to attack the group. Cassius and Abigail fend her off with kicks, but she turns her attention to David, who manages to snap his restraints and fight back. Their struggle is brief. David overpowers her until Norton intervenes with the device to incapacitate him again. However, David hasn't fully transformed yet and pushes through the pain to free himself completely. Cassius finds a gun and fires at Norton, who flees immediately. The group scrambles upstairs, barricading the door behind them as Norton begins hacking at it with an axe. Abigail grabs Norton's car keys, and Cassius retrieves their belongings before punching David. Though Cassius wants to shoot David now, the women manage to convince him to hold off for now. As they make their way to the vehicle, Megan realizes her water has broken. Norton emerges to watch as the group speeds away, his infected wife snarling at him in the background. When the car reaches the woods, the horde finally catches up, relentlessly pursuing them. In the distance, they spot lights, confirmation that they've reached the colony. They push the car to its limits, but their path is abruptly blocked by a fallen tree, forcing them to continue on foot. With the horde closing in, they start firing back, but David soon runs out of ammunition. Knowing his transformation is imminent, he urges the others to leave while he holds off the attackers. The couple shares an emotional farewell, and before departing, Cassius hands David his last bullet. Once they're a safe distance away, David lights his cigarette and begins battling the ferals in close combat. He manages to take down several before the massive feral ambushes him from behind, snapping his neck. The remaining ferals turn their attention to the fleeing survivors. Abigail fires her weapon to cover Cassius as he carries Megan, all while shouting for help. Her cries attract the attention of the colony's guards, who swiftly eliminate the pursuing horde. Seeing the carnage and the bright lights, the rest of the horde retreats into the forest. The survivors are granted entry into the colony, and Megan is rushed to the infirmary, where a midwife tends to her. The next morning, after meeting with the colony's leader, Cassius urges Abigail to leave soon, warning her that people can't be trusted. Exhausted from their constant flight, Abigail dismisses his concerns. Later, Cassius speaks with the midwife, who reassures him that the baby is healthy, but reveals Megan only has hours left to live. Cassius visits his friend one last time, learning she's named the child Hope. Before passing, Megan reminds him of his promise and gives him her family locket. Meanwhile, Norton arrives at the forest and discovers the bodies left behind. As he wanders, he catches sight of the colony. At that moment, the horde attempts to attack him, but he quickly regains control using his device, declaring it's time for vengeance. Back at the colony, Cassius cares for Hope, contemplating their next move. Abigail bonds with local teens and joins a small gathering that evening. Alcohol flows freely, and 2 guards fall asleep, allowing some curious teens to sneak into a tunnel. Abigail follows them and stumbles upon a peculiar remote. Before she can touch it, Roderick intervenes, explaining that the entire boat settlement is rigged with explosives. If the ferals breach it, the remote will detonate everything. A hatch on the ground provides a safe escape route to an abandoned dam. The next morning, Norton spots a guard on a boat and calls out for assistance. After eliminating the guard, a feral leaps into the water, infiltrates the colony, and kills another sentry. With the defenses breached, Norton commands the horde to launch a full-scale assault. Chaos erupts as survivors are attacked, prompting armed colonists to fight back. Abigail saves Roderick from a feral before organizing the teen group. Those with weapons are tasked with finding higher ground to provide cover fire, while Roderick guides civilians to the dam. Abigail sets off to find Cassius as panic grips the colony. In the chaos, the midwife takes Hope from Cassius so he can search for Abigail. The armed defenders are beginning to deplete their ammunition, and the colony leader attempts to flee but is swiftly killed by a feral. Abigail fires at a feral moments before it can harm 2 young girls, while Cassius uses a blade to fend off a creature attacking 2 teenagers. Eventually, Abigail and Cassius reunite and begin combating the ferals together, using both firearms and close-quarters combat. Spotting an opportunity, they attempt to join the evacuation, but Cassius gets sidetracked when he notices Norton. A feral seizes the moment to pounce on him, but Cassius manages to stab it. Before he can recover, Norton appears, delivering kicks while ranting about creating a better world. After a brief struggle, Cassius regains his footing and slams Norton against a wall, repeatedly smashing his device until it's destroyed. Cassius then sprints back to Abigail as the ferals swarm Norton, tearing him apart. Meanwhile, the survivors finish crossing the tunnel and reach the dam. They urge Roderick to detonate the explosives, but he hesitates, knowing Abigail hasn't emerged yet. Back in the colony, the massive feral lunges at Abigail, prompting Cassius to strike it with an oar. As the creature collapses, Abigail notices its bracelet and is horrified to realize it's her father. Overcome with shock, she freezes, forcing Cassius to snap her out of it and pull her toward the hatch. The pair barely makes it into the tunnel before Roderick, growing impatient, triggers the explosion, wiping out every feral in the colony. Later, the survivors discover an infected man among them. As Cassius tries to calm him, a feral unexpectedly leaps out and kills the man before turning its attention to Cassius, sparking a brutal fight. They exchange blows until they collapse to the ground, where the feral nearly sinks its teeth into Cassius. This time, Abigail remains composed, waiting for the perfect moment to fire, eliminating the feral without harming her ally. As the group watches the colony burn, they ponder their next move. Abigail suggests they can build a new home in the dam, and Cassius reveals he took Norton's journal, which contains instructions for constructing a generator.